Welcome to the Might in Motion podcast, where we empower leaders like you to navigate both their personal and professional journeys. Are you a manager hungry to reshape the course of your career? I'm your host, Mariana Kinney, and for the past 24 years, I've been a Fortune 50 leader, absorbing invaluable lessons from industry luminaries on how to break free from limiting beliefs and habits. Join us as we unravel the secrets to success, providing you with the inspiration to craft your own action plan and propel yourself towards your goals. This is your journey, your might in motion. Welcome to the podcast that propels you. Welcome to Might in Motion. Deb Coviello is an accomplished author, podcast host, and leadership expert in quality and operational excellence. Known as the CEO Whisperer, Deb uses her 30 years of experience to help CEOs and C-suite leaders of tomorrow find peace of mind by providing solutions to their technical business issues and elevating their teams. Her book, The CEO's Compass, is a go-to guide for navigating challenges and achieving lasting success. Deb, welcome to Might in Motion. I am really excited to have you here today.
And I am as well. I feel like we've known each other for so long. When we talk about these topics, I feel like we're completely on the same page. So really, really looking forward to the conversation.
And you are on my rotation for podcast listening. So you're always in my ear at least once a week. I'm listening to your podcast and I'm getting something out of it. And so this is like a dream come true to talk to you face to face again.
I'm thrilled for that. Thank you. You know, it's one of those things, as you know, as a podcast host, it is a passion project. You never know what's going to come out of it, but then you never, ever really know who is listening. And the beauty of it is when somebody comes back and says, I heard you say this, and this is how it helped me. So again, I'm all in podcasting, an amazing platform, and hopefully somebody will say the same thing about this episode.
That's right. And I think they will. You know, one of the things we talked about a few months ago when we first met was about kind of changing and reframing your mindset. You know, when we think ahead of things, sometimes we always think of the worst case scenario. And you said something that really resonated with me. You said, think about what would happen if you succeeded.
Yeah, that goes back to a time in my history, maybe 10, 15 years ago. I was getting ready for a big presentation and I was working with a personal trainer. And I'm talking about, is it going to be perfect? And I've never done this before, and a lot of negative mindset issues. And the beauty of a personal trainer, if you got a really good one, it's not just about the reps and the weights, but they also deal with your mind. And he said, he was in sales, he's got a lot of experience. And one of the things that he said to me as I was talking about the what ifs and I can't do this and all of that trash, he said, what would happen if you actually succeeded? You might actually succeed. And it kind of stopped me in my reps. It stopped me in my place to realize, wow, that was really profound. And, until you actually move forward and practice that and go forward with that mindset, you don't believe it. But I will tell you, and I want people to try this at home. If you flip your mindset a little bit and say, what if I actually succeed? Whether it's asking for a promotion, pitching something, making a proposal, trying to rally people around, I promise you, 80+% of the time, you are going to be successful. And if not 100%, you're going to learn something along the way. Mindset is key. You might actually succeed.
But, I was talking to somebody this morning and we were talking about your mind is a magnet, right? And when you start having a positive thought or creating the more exciting and positive potential outcomes in your mind, you're more apt to actually draw that to you.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to be attuned to it.
Yes.
Because we're so programmed from our education and our corporate lives of what you do wrong. And so you're always in survival mode looking for what it is that I'm doing wrong. And it's few places, rare instances, people in your life that will look at the good. Well, look at the successes. Look at what you're doing well. You're experimenting. You're trying new things. You might make a mistake, but you say, but you know what? Look at what I learned. I won't make that mistake again. It's just kind of changing your persona to be looking at the positive. And I will tell you, it rubs off. I have my children. I have 3 grown children now, and I remember them saying, I said, regardless of what is happening, you always seem to have a positive perspective on it. And I think just to survive life, you have to put a positive spin on anything that you're trying. But again, with the mindset, I might actually succeed, and then take note of those little gems, those raindrops, those somebody saying something. Oh, that was a really good presentation, even though maybe the higher ups tore it apart. You impacted maybe one person. Don't let those roll off your shoulders. Write those things down. Remember them. You may be impacting people you don't even know by just having that positive mindset and looking at the good.
Yeah, it really does have a ripple effect throughout an organization. And many of my listeners have heard me say this. I love taking teams from chaos to community, right? Chaos, everybody's like crazy, right? And that happens throughout the year or throughout a team's lifespan, right? But the sooner you can get people to that mindset of community, that positivity really starts allowing everybody to elevate, which I just is always a beautiful thing. I love it when I see that with the team.
I mean, community is amazing because if you are in that chaos mindset of, okay, well, I made the presentation, they didn't go for it, or maybe people won't even notice if I get my action item done, you find that when you know that you come to a place of where you are supported, there's a little bit more accountability. People have a little bit more skin in the game, focusing on the humanity of the team and building that. Again, people like you, people like me can quiet down the chaos and look at the team and what they're going to do. It's amazing what you can do when you have a robust team. When we as leaders look at what can we do to calm things down, when we look at ways that we can build their confidence or maybe expose them to something and build their capability or unleash something or remove a barrier for them, little by little we're building trust. And little by little, that all that trust, to your point, builds that community. And the next thing you know, as a leader, you look back and say, I got a well-oiled machine. I can just watch and support and let them
Yeah.
do the work.
That's right. It's amazing when that happens. Now, as you move in your career and end up having years of leadership experience to learn that lesson. It's easier to look back and say, oh, just do that. But if you're a new manager, you've been a great individual contributor and you just got this promotion, a lot of times people struggle with that. They struggle with making that transition, and I'd say that transition happens multiple times in your career, right? As you go from a manager of single people, now you're a manager of managers, and as you see people rise up to the C-suite, they go through different rounds of that uncertainty. What would you recommend for people to hopefully get through that more quickly, and break that cycle so they can move up with their promotion, both emotionally, mentally, all the things.
So this is a tough one for me, but it's really part of who I am. And I think a lot of your listeners out there are probably already high performing people. They are rewarded when they get that work done, the project done, and that's how we move up. And then what happens at one point is that we work really, really hard and then we get slapped down. You shouldn't have said that, Deb. Then you look around the room when you make a mistake and then you're saying, well, if I made a mistake, who's there to help and guide me? And what I found was it was very lonely because people just expect you to perform. They hire good people. When you don't perform, then they start putting you in a box as an average or low performer. But what's missing from those organizations is a support structure. And that's part of who I am. And for sure, it's part of who you are and why we're here today is I find so many amazing people move through rapidly. And then they get to a place where there's no support. And we cannot always look at our leader, our manager, for that support. So what I say first thing is along the way, don't wait to look for a mentor or a coach or a colleague that's got your back. Maybe somebody in your community that's outside the corporate life that sincerely cares about seeing you succeed. I advise you, start building that community of advocates, supporters that see your potential. So when you get to one of these junctures where you didn't get the desired result, tap into them. Because I remember not having a support system, and what had happens, my voice went quiet. For a long time, I was very risk averse. I didn't want to have the uncertainty. My full potential didn't come out, and I lost momentum. But conversely, once you have that support and you do make a mistake, your learning curve is accelerated. I will tell you once, I had this presentation and it wasn't well received by top leadership. But when I had lunch with my colleagues, they said, Deb, we need more leaders like you to speak and act and behave the way you did during that presentation. Unbeknownst to me, there was community that I didn't even know about. And then those colleagues had my back, and that propelled me to keep going, even though there were naysayers over here. I had people that had my back. So seek community, seek those advocates, those mentors, but also be open to those ones that just pop up and bring them in.
Yeah, I love the thought process too of external. So for me personally, when I first started looking externally, I went to my alma mater and I was like, I will join a group at my alma mater, right? And that was wonderful. And then I decided to go even further and started joining other mentor groups that were more on a national scale. And it opened up my eyes to, wow, there's so much more out there, right? And I can learn from this entrepreneur or this doctor or this, tech startup CEO, people that maybe I wouldn't have necessarily interacted with if I had just stayed in my corporate bubble of who I thought could be a mentor. So that whole opening yourself up is phenomenal because you start seeing different things, you learn different things that you can then bring back to the table and help others grow.
And I would encourage just other static resources like podcasts and books.
Mhm.
I went through a very difficult time transitioning from corporate into entrepreneurial life. And during that time, I was a bit lost and I didn't have the support system I thought. But unbeknownst to me, I started listening to this podcast, Creative Warriors, focused on people that took the leap and bet on themselves to do something on their own. And I still wasn't sure what I was going to do, but by listening to these words and you can do it, and look at these people that had nothing and became something and all of that, it becomes inspirational. Say, yeah, I can do that. So definitely people resources, but also audible video resources. You never know where inspiration is going to come from.
Yeah, it's all around. You just have to open your eyes to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you talk about having corporate courage, and I'm a big fan of radical candor. Anybody who's ever worked with me will say she's. I'll just tell you how it is, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, right? Um, and I think that's been a really cool success. So I'd love to know your thoughts on how people can actually get into a space where they are showing their courage.
I giggle a little bit when I all of a sudden like, okay, can we go there?
Yes,
you know,
we
when
can.
I there's two ways of corporate courage. I have two perspectives. One is when I see a founder or a CEO or president of a company, VP of operations, that people are just struggling and don't have the courage to ask for help. And I see another demographic of when you're within a corporation, those same leaders not asking for help, but then what can we maybe do as entry or mid-level career people to step into that area of being uncomfortable? So from an external perspective, when I've worked with different clients and I look at these leaders, they go from a place of control, and this may
Mm,
be familiar to you, to things are starting to get a little rocky. We're firefighting. We are in a place of chaos. And they say, I can do this. I got a playbook. We can get through. And then what happens is you start losing customers or trust in different people. You're in a crisis mode where what you had is eroding. Leaders sometimes, actually many of them, will wait to ask for help when they're in crisis. And then sometimes it's too late or it's too expensive. That can happen within a corporation. And I will tell you, quite frankly, I was one of those people. I was having a very challenging time in one of my last corporate careers. Again, I'd done amazing work, but something changed. It got really crazy. I was doing everything I could to get the right resources, but potentially I could have raised the flag a little bit sooner for fear of
mm,
my pride, my capability. I should have this.
mm.
I advise people, if you're in that position yourself, have the courage to ask for help sooner than later so you don't get yourself in a mess. Part two, though, is for that leader, that person that sees their leader. They think that their leader is on a pedestal and you shouldn't question. If you see them in a place of crisis, see that person as your equal. They're just another human. They just
Yeah.
happen to have maybe different or more experience than you. I would say you should also have the courage to learn the vocabulary, to be empathetic, and ask to speak to that leader for what you see is happening, or maybe the impact on you and the team within a corporation. Have the courage to help leaders who might need it and don't know it. That's
Mm,
one thing I've learned as well, is be able to learn tools and techniques to manage up, because ultimately you want to be in those roles of leadership. Why not start acting like it now by being
yeah.
the one with the courage?
Yeah, the managing up is it's hard. It's hard to you learn it and you have to relearn it and you have to
Hmm.
relearn it because every one of your leaders is a little bit different. There's a different personality. And so you have to be able to adjust on that upward, management, which is,
Yeah.
it can be a challenge at times, but it is that's probably been one of the most valuable things throughout my career that I've seen, that you can really help not only yourself, but you can help your team.
Yeah, and this topic of courage, again, is what you need to muster up. It's that
Mhm.
positive persona. Find the courage within you to say what needs to be said or ask the questions that are hard. Because, again, corporations, and depending on the culture, may not embrace people questioning, or this is what we've always done and it's been successful. People keep their voice down, but I think people should weigh the risk and the reward and the chance that they might actually be successful
Yeah,
at influencing somebody. Again, trust yourself, bet on yourself. You might actually succeed in helping others to have the courage.
I love that. So, can you tell the audience a little bit more about your book, The CEO's Compass? I'd love to know more about it, and I think the audience would too.
Okay, so the CEO's compass had to get written. It was one of those things that I show up on the scene. I am putting video and blog posts and all kinds of things out on social media. And then have an opportunity. I create this presentation for a world conference for American Society for Quality. And I put it out there into the world. And as I'm looking at it, I said, this is a system. This is a process. This is my
Mm,
intellectual property. And it started saying, oh my God, like this is new to people. People found it interesting. Well, it came to a point where somebody says, I don't know what you're about. I
mm,
really am not sure. You're putting out this great stuff, but I don't know you. And what is your philosophy and what do you stand for? So it's like, ooh, time to write a book. And again, I'll say to people out there, you're all very smart. You're amazing, your listeners, and you have your own unique thoughts. What I would suggest to you before I get back to the book is, if you have these unique thoughts or you put out a presentation and people thought it was amazing, write these things down. Keep a notebook of all these thoughts, because what's going to happen is in a year, 2, 3 from now, you're going to look at all that stuff and say, oh my God, I have been talking about this. Or, oh, okay, this is what I stand for. You have unique intellectual property. So, fast forward, I wrote the book, and when it started out as a 7P approach to leadership. And I'm thinking about that. It's like, that doesn't really resonate with anybody. It resonates to me, people in quality. And then I just started noodling. And again, this is the creative part of me coming in. I just started noodling and making pictures with my 7Ps that are part of the compass. The next thing I know, there was a compass on my piece of paper. And so the CEO's compass is all about leaders first doing some self reflection, because the old playbook of how they perform and how they got to where they are
mhm.
is no longer working. Something changed and they start losing their confidence. And so, what I do is I start out by saying you should look inside and see what kind of leader you are. Do you like who you are? Do you need to change before you take somebody else's recipe? But what I do is then I say, you know what? Stop seeking results, but you're actually in pursuit of peace of mind. Peace of mind is based on outcomes and the performance of your people. And so I put together 7 compass points: purpose and performance, past and pride, and then the
Mm,
typical ones:
yeah.
people, process, and platforms or tools. But I do it in the context, if it's not about IT technology, it's not about training people, it's about elevating the human dynamic of how people think of themselves and how they perform, how they interact with others, and then give them the tools and the support that they need so they can sustain those gains. Anyway, long story short, it became really what I stood for: is let me be the compass for people. Let me offer my best insights to help those leaders get back on track. All they need is a compass. Pick your journey, which way you think you're off track,
Yeah.
and get to peace of mind or true north. That is the CEO's compass. And I'm proud of that work. And
Yeah.
um, and it resonates with a lot of people.
It definitely does, and there's times when there's just destabilization right within a corporate
Yeah,
space,
right.
and you feel like you're losing your footing, right? Having that guide, having something that you can hold on to say, let me reset. Maybe it's my mindset. Maybe not everything isn't as crazy as I think it is. I love that you're bringing that to people to be able to kind of refocus and retune in.
Now, I will say things were out of control in my last
Hmm.
corporate role. It was crazy. I remember coming home and saying to my husband, something's got to change. Something's got to change. My usual relaxation modes to get me grounded again and be able to face another day were no longer working. And so I was at a place where I had the courage to say, something's got to change. Now, change happened to me, but it was the best thing that ever happened. But my philosophy, who I am, what I stand for, how I lead, my principles
Yeah.
worked in other environments. Small and
Hmm.
medium sized companies, founders, CEOs, presidents of small and medium sized companies, they liked the way I operate, the what I stood for. So, CEO's compass. Do I have to change? Maybe I'll think about it. Or maybe I have to change my environment
Hmm.
and be successful.
Yeah, and as a leader, if my philosophy is if I see people leaving, well, I want to have a real legit conversation on why, right? And what maybe has caused a destabilization for that person that can be adjusted to help the rest of the team, the rest of the community, right? Because I love that you're like, hey, those principles that you had worked, they continue to work,
Yeah.
and being kind of pushed out of the nest or however you want to talk about it was liberating.
It was so liberating.
Yeah.
It manifests itself in so many ways because, again, I knew what I was technically good at. Plug and
Hmm.
play put me in another corporate quality OPEX position. I know I could do that. But it's one of those things when we think about looking forward, do we do it in the context of what we did before? Or
Yeah.
do we reflect? What was I good at? That's a good thing. What do I really love to do?
Mm.
What do I jump in and do first versus procrastinating? Take those thoughts, take that time to reflect because you just don't want to rinse and repeat and do the same old thing. And then eventually 2 or 3 years later, you're dissatisfied again. Think about what you love and what you're good at. Combine that and look for those opportunities.
Yeah. Now, if you could look ahead and talk to Deb 5 years from now, what advice would you want to give her in the future?
I'm going to cry. You should have trusted yourself and
Mm.
be patient. That time will tell. Just keep doing all the right things.
Yeah.
It's because I have a vision of what 5 years looks for me. And I think I'm doing the right things. I'm taking certain risks on me. I'm speaking to people like you. I want
Yeah.
to add value to you. This is my stage here. But I see myself on a very large stage, a physical stage, a very large virtual stage, being able to connect with more people. And right now it's very uncertain, and I'm having a really hard time. Just trust the process.
Hmm.
Prepare yourself, learn, meet people, build your network, your resources, get to know all the right people because trust yourself. You will arrive. That moment will arrive for you. But I'm going to tell myself, Deb, just trust yourself. Just keep going.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
That is huge. I mean, that is a huge piece of advice I think to give to either your past self or your future self, because where you are now started because you trusted yourself 5 years ago.
True.
And so that gives you the the momentum to get where you're going. You have a trajectory, and you've already proven that you have a trajectory, and now it's just continuing on that journey. I love that.
Continuing, but I guess I'm going to ask you for advice. What do you do about I am not a patient person. I am used to making things happen. And it's like trying to trust that it may not be on my timeline. It might be
Yeah.
on somebody else's timeline, you know?
Yeah, I'm not very patient either. I'm sure my husband would agree. My parents definitely would agree. Right. And I just always you got to put things in motion, right? And when I'm faced with somebody who says that's impossible, or it's going to cost you this, or it's going to take you this much time. That's when like the fighter in me like start like really okay. Well, I'm gonna prove that
Oh,
that
yeah.
I can do it, right? It's almost like that's a little fire for me, of like somebody says I can't. Well, by golly, I'm gonna I'm gonna show that you can, and it may not be perfect, right? But I think when you have a vision and you can really clearly see it. And it sounds like you can really
I
clearly
really do.
see the stage, the people, what it smells like, what it sounds like. It will manifest itself. It just may not manifest exactly in the way you think it is.
I agree. And I've actually had a coach a little while ago and reminded me to just lay out the plan. And I am
Yeah.
looking right now at a large whiteboard for different work streams, month by
Yep.
month by month. And each month I grade. Did I move a little bit forward on this one, a little bit forward? Oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's cross that out. That's not a path
Yeah.
to go. But I can see myself incrementally moving forward. To your point, might in motion.
That's
It is
right.
about that forward momentum is don't yourself self-inflict that barrier that you can't do something. But I always tell my listeners, like, think about what is it that you can do today and tomorrow. Even if you can't maybe move into that ideal role or start that initiative, you do have the control to at least prepare yourself and
That's
keep
right.
moving forward.
That's right. And sometimes, like if I'm thinking about my career path, there was a lot of lateral moves, but
Yes.
that was okay because it put me somewhere completely different. I was forced to think about things in a different way. And when you do that, it opens up your mind, it opens up like your empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can really start connecting the dots. And um yeah, I love it. Now this has been a really cool conversation, and I can't believe how fast time goes by when we're having a conversation like this. But people are gonna be like, "Oh man, like Deb is awesome. I want to learn more." What's the best way for people to reach you?
So I make myself extremely accessible because one, I love human connection. I love just getting to know people first. I don't try to sell you things or offer you things, but I just want to get to know you first as a human being. What are your opportunities or challenges? And maybe in a few moments I can impart something. But the best way to get a hold of me is go to my website, dropinceo.com, go to my contact page, reach out to me, schedule 15 minutes with me. I am there. I have no virtual assistant, or I love LinkedIn. It is my playground. I'm there quite often. Go to Deborah Ann Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. Direct message me. That's me answering those. And again, I would love to connect with you and see how I can support you.
Yeah, and you have a fantastic podcast. I highly recommend. It should be on everybody's rotation. I love to scribble down my notes, and usually I can read them. Sometimes I'm not. I'm like, what did I write there? But some of the things I wrote down today was, when you have the positive mindset of what would happen if you succeed, and that came to you as you were talking with a trainer, right? Excuse me. Excuse me. I got really choked up about that one. And it allows you to reframe your mindset. That very quick question can help you reframe your mindset and allow you to reprogram your mindset to have that more positive, joyful outlook. You talked a little bit too about quieting down the chaos, calming things down as a leader. You look around on who can help you grow, who's somebody that's in the room with you that might be able to provide you feedback on, hey, how you handled this question was really, really great. But this one, like, let's talk about it, maybe a different way to approach it with this leadership team. Have those people around you that you can trust and to get good feedback from, but then also like look externally too. There are so many resources out there. There's the podcast, there's books, there's networking groups, there's masterminds that you can really gather people around you to help you. We talked a little bit too about having corporate courage, right? And there are leaders that never ask for help. There's kind of an unwillingness to change, but if you have the courage to raise your hand and say, hey, I need some help in this scenario, and then also to see other people as human, can really help you in your work and in your life, but really help you kind of have that courage to be able to elevate your team We talked a lot about your book, the CEO Compass, and it really gives you that opportunity to kind of guide yourself. So if you're in that chaos, you're in that uncertainty, you're in this world of leadership, you've got another tool in your toolbox, right? So highly recommend the book. And then your advice to yourself in the future, I think everybody can learn from this, is to trust yourself and to be patient with the process, right? So I loved this conversation, Deb, and I'm so appreciative of your time today and sharing you with the Might in Motion community.
And this, again, I agree, was a great conversation. I cannot wait to have you on the Drop In CEO podcast and provide more value to your listeners. But again, thank you so much for a great opportunity. Truly love the conversation. And thank you again.
For everyone listening, don't forget, subscribe, like, comment, share, review, all the things, and have a great day.